So one of the great things about the uni-ball pen range is that you have a variation of different nib sizes, which means you can produce lots of different line effects on your work, which means it's great for things like Zentangle or mandalas, as well as some hand script, or just general drawing, or architectural drawing, or graphic design. So it's great for all these different types of line making that you can make, because you've got a variation in line width and colour density. So what I've done already is I've used my 0.5 pen to colour in some of the areas here. So we've got these nice black contrasty areas. So I'm going to just use my 0.5 just to make some lines here as well, just to finish off this design before I get started on showing you how various line widths can produce various different types of design. So you can see already that you can just produce a very strong, confident, even with just the diagonal lines here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you all the different types of the pen with the lines that we can produce. So I think I'll go for a 0.8, the thickest line, just to show you what we can do there. So we've got our 0.8, and what I've done is I've just sketched some things in so we can so it's nice and easy to start with. So I'm going to start at the top of this insect's head. I'm just going to make some very nice loops, and I will contrast these loops with some thinner pin lines, so then you can just see how they work. So I'm just going to colour these areas in. You can see again that you can produce a very, very solid colour coverage here. And then we've got a nice thick 0.8 line. And so what we'll do is we'll use a 0.2 line just to make some dots in between there. And then to work inside that, so you can see the contrast in line. I'm also just going to put that outside on the outside edge, so you can see the difference between the 0.8 and the 0.2, and I can put that in there. So it's great for when you want to produce a bit of variation. Already you're producing quite ornate effects, so let's continue with our 0.8 and 0.2 on this zigzag pattern. So we've got a nice thick robust line for the 0.8, and we'll just do another one here and here and here and here. Then we're going to use our 0.2 to go in between. Now you've probably got a steadier hand than me, so you might be able to sit them directly in the centre. I don't mind, I quite like a little random pattern. But again, you know, you've produced a bit of a variation. I'm just going to make some little small dots at the bottom. So again, you've got something fairly simple there, but very ornate, just by working those two contrasting lines. Now we're going to use a thin 0.1 on the top of our design here. So we're just going to produce very thin swirly lines, and I'm going to play about with the direction with each bit of the insect. So going in one way there, and I'm just outlining it here, and then another way here. So you can produce variation in movement just through playing with the direction of your lines. So that produces quite a nice effect. And then just on the bottom here we've still got, so I'm going to just make some horizontal lines here. This is with the 0.1, I can go quite close in, so I can create texture just by overlaying those lines. And I can just cross-hatch some of these as well. So again, you're creating very, very simple textural graphic art just by playing around with your different line directions and widths and contrasting them together. I'm just going to work up this kind of concentric design here. So I've just been very basic with my lines. I'm trying to use a design that isn't overly complicated, just because I want to illustrate to you how these lines can work with each other. You can see that's our 0.3 pen has got quite a strong line, but not so thick that it dominates too much, but it's just nice and strong. Now if I wanted to, I could contrast that with a smaller pen. So what I might do is on this area here, I might do that just so that we can see the difference. So what we haven't used yet is our 0.0 ranges. So I'm just going to do a sort of combination of the 0.05 and the 0.03. And all I'm going to do is I'm going to just show you some free shading techniques. This is with the 0.05, so you can see already that I can produce, because I'm being quite gentle, I can produce a very thin and it's not so heavy line. Then I can add definition with that. I can produce some lines over my free shading. And you can see how those lines compare to the 0.3. So even though it's only a few sizes up, you can produce different effects. I'm just going to cross hatch that over as well. So you can produce variation in your shading as well. So just as a slight bit of contrast, I'm going to use the 0.3 on the bottom. So again, I'm going to just show you how you can produce quite a thin line here. And I'm just going to free shade a bit. And because it's such a sort of fine line, you can see already it wants to make a very fine, precise line. So I'm just going to cross hatch a bit over here. I'm doing this with very, very light pressure. But you can already see that that's much, even that's only one size up on our pen scale, that's a bit darker than that. But what I'll do as well is I'll just so we're already producing variation in the marks that we can make with our 0.03 and 0.05 pen. So we want some contrast there. So I'm going to use a much thicker pen. I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use the 0.7 for this central bit. So this is quite cool really, because we've actually gone through all of them except, because we've done our 5, our 8 and 2, our 1, our 3, our 0 points. So now we can actually go to town on this, and we can might use a bit of the brush and then I can just pick what I like now, because I've kind of gone through most of my sizes. But again, we just want to, what we're trying to do here is just to explore the different lines that we're making. So let's explore some different lines with this central floral design. So various different techniques we can use. So I'm just going to first use, just going to make a little, you can see that I'm just using the tip, and then I'm just with my brush to create variation in line here. So it's quite nice, and I can go, and I can just produce a varying line. I can also colour this in if I don't like it, so I do quite like it, but I'm just going to show you how you can make up for any kind of mistakes if you wanted to just have that as a inverse. Again, just using a slight angle to get the most colour coverage. I can also do a bit of that. So I'm going to take advantage of using this brush tip, so I'm going to just use the very tip to create my line here. Then what I'm going to do is just press to make some dashes here. So I'm just working the angle of the brush to create some nice lines and dashes. Thus. So I've got my nice dark inners. I'm going to still sort of work on around here. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to work on the outside first, just to create a bit of contrast. So I'm going to use the 02, the 02, 0.2 even, on this outside. So I'm just going to, because I want a robust line, but I don't want it to be too thick on these intersecting petals. All I'm going to do is just go around them again. Just twice. So again, I'm already creating variation in tone and texture, and I'm producing different line effects just with by using different. So again, what I can do now is I can start working on these. So with these central petals, I'm going to just make the most of my different pens and use different kinds of squiggly lines and various different techniques. So for some of the petals, I just want to count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Right. So I'm going to use a nice thick black in the centre, and I'm just going to dot around them so it looks like dots are coming around. So just very, very simple. It's a really simple technique. I always think it's quite effective with these designs. So again, really just a very simple circle and then some dots around it, so very easy to do. You can see with the 0.8 it does produce really solid colour around it, so it's quite quick to produce something quite dense, and you've got a lovely nice opaque black finish here. So I'm going to use, I think I'm going to use a 0.4 just to go over some of these outlines, and again just to show the middle ground between the 2, the brush, the 0.1 and the 8. And what I can do is I can echo some of the things that I've done already. So I can, for example, maybe just colour in the tips here and then just provide some dots to echo what I've done in the centre. And what I've done, as I say, if I was just making just dots like that, like I did with the 8, they'd be quite smaller, so I'm just going to go over them a little bit. There we go. Now some petals, I freehand drew this, I didn't do this with a compass or anything, so some of the petals are bigger than others, so it's a slight variation. It's not a particularly precise design. It just sort of came out of my head really. It was a bit of a doodle. So obviously one of the tips is if you want something consistent, if you want to produce a sort of consistent type mandala or Zentangle design, it might be good to do it with a ruler and measure everything out. I haven't done that with this. I've just been a bit freestyle with it. So that's 0.4, and then I'm just going to be a bit wild. Well, I'd say wild. I'm just going to get 0.2 and just zigzag. On that, I quite like using zigzags and everything, and what you can do is obviously colour in and provide some things around it, so that's quite an effective design. And I think what I might do is just play around. I've got these two areas here. I might, as I've done here, play around with inverse making, and I'll show you what that means. So with inverse designing, you're kind of working in your negative space, so you're kind of using the black to draw, and you're kind of drawing with white, if that makes sense. So I'm just drawing some little circles and blobs really while I'm colouring in now. I want to kind of keep that tip, so I'll just make sure I avoid the black tip around my petals, but then I'm just, as I say, just making crazy little shapes in here. I can add little dots in if I want to. I'm just kind of not being particularly precise, which I haven't done with this, just sort of like playing with the inverse shapes and being a bit random, which I quite like. Tricky when I come to here, so I can just bring that in a bit cheating, but I don't mind cheating. When it comes to things like this, it can, it's quite fun really. It's just, it's meant to be relaxing, so let's relax. Don't get too hung up on things. There we go. So it's just creating little fun little bits. So I can make a bigger circle here. And I'm taking advantage of the colour coverage of my brush. I can buff up right up against that. Produce some little circles here. So it's just little circles in here just to create little like bubbles really. I can just put some, look a bit like eyes or something, you know, so it's just a bit of fun really. It will produce a nice contrast with your central design. There we go, so that's the last bit. What you can do is, like I've done circles here, but what we'll do with the legs is we'll do some little triangles. And we'll just colour around these triangles. So again, it's just about producing as many kind of different and having fun, all the different kind of decorative effects you can produce with your pin pens. And as I say, I mean, you might want to produce something completely different. So just take a basic shape. I've taken this basic kind of insect shape, then I've just embellished it with various things, but I can correct things as well. If I don't like something, I can always go over it and stuff. So there's just a little talk through of all the different line effects that you can make with your black uni-PIN pen.